Her family kept saying, "Your ex was so much better for our daughter." I smiled calmly and said, "I understand." Then I ended things and sent her back to him. Their frantic calls only started after he refused to take her back. I was 31, she was 28, and we had been together for 18 months. We met through friends, clicked instantly, moved in together after a year. Everything felt easy, comfortable, ordinary in a good way. But her family lived 2 hours away, and every monthly visit turned into a performance where her ex was the main character and I was the background noise no one wanted to hear. Someone always brought him up. The ex who walked on water, built empires, solved world hunger, and apparently carved turkeys better than any human in recorded history. On Thanksgiving, her mom was carving the bird and casually mentioned, "Oh, you know who was wonderful at carving? Her ex. He had such a steady hand. Are you sure you know what you're doing?" And I was literally just standing there holding a fork. I hadn't even touched anything yet. I just smiled and said, "I'll manage." Her dad took his turn during dinner, asking about my career plans in a tone that suggested I had none worth mentioning. Then he added, "Her ex was so ambitious, made partner at his firm by 28. Real go-getter. I was a civil engineer, stable job, solid income, good work, but apparently not shiny enough for them." Her younger brother joined in too, asking what I drove, then laughing when I said Honda Accord because the ex drove a Tesla. Throughout all this, my girlfriend only gave small apologetic looks, but not a single word of defense. Not one. She let them praise a man who was no longer in her life while treating me like the discount version of him. Later, while helping with dishes, her aunt cornered me and whispered, "You seem nice, but her ex was so much better for her. More cultured. He took her to the opera. Fancy restaurants. Do you even own a suit?" I actually owned 3, wore one to a wedding 2 months before, but somehow that didn't matter. Driving home, hours after the comments stopped, the echoes still clung to my mind. I finally brought it up in the car. She shrugged and said they were just attached to her ex because they knew him for 4 years. When I tried to explain that they compared me to him constantly, she told me I was being sensitive. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about her family. This was about her choosing silence over standing up for me every single time. Our next visit was her dad's birthday, another round of comparisons, another round of her defending no one but her family. Her dad criticized the scotch I brought because the ex used to bring an even more expensive bottle. Her mom showed old photos filled with the ex like he was still part of their daily lives. Her cousin even pulled me aside and suggested I step aside so my girlfriend could work things out with her ex. That night, I sat in the car while my girlfriend went inside, and for the first time, I admitted to myself that this was not a temporary problem. This was a pattern and she let it happen. When I confronted her, she told me she didn't want to cause drama. And when I asked why she broke up with the ex, I learned the truth. He wanted marriage and she didn't. Now he had moved on with his life, and here I was being compared to someone who didn't even want her anymore. When I told her I was tired of competing with a ghost, she called it an ultimatum. I called it a boundary. And when she said maybe we weren't compatible, something inside me finally clicked. I realized I was done. I told her to call her ex and see if he wanted her back. She actually did. And he actually didn't. He had been seeing someone for 6 months and was already engaged. When she came out with her face pale and her voice broken, I was already emotionally finished. I told her the truth. Her family lived in the past, and he had moved on. I told her to pack her things and stay with her parents. That night, she called them, and I heard every word of them finally realizing their perfect golden boy didn't want her anymore. But it didn't matter. I was already out the door emotionally, and there was no path back. Here is the continuation and the full ending, written in long, flowing, human-style paragraphs, divided naturally into 2 extended sections, and matching the tone we established earlier. ## Part 2. The Collapse. The days that followed unfolded like a slow-burning disaster, the kind where everyone sees the flames rising long before the building finally caves in. Her parents kept calling me, shifting between soft pleading and sharp accusations. acting like I had somehow wronged their daughter by choosing peace and self-respect over constant disrespect. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I had already spent enough of my life justifying my choices to people who never cared to understand them. Instead, I kept silent and watched their panic grow with every hour that passed. By the second day, her mother was leaving messages rambling about how her daughter wasn't eating, how she kept asking why I overreacted, and how I should at least meet her once, so she could explain her side. Side of what exactly? Everything had been right in front of me. Her family's comparisons, their subtle insults, their clear preference for the man they thought was more suitable for her. They had pushed and pushed, assuming I would keep bending. But that door was closed now, and I had no intention of opening it ever again. Meanwhile, she was living in her own storm. Her ex had not only refused to take her back, he blocked her the moment she tried. Friends she called didn't pick up. The world she thought she could fall back onto simply wasn't there anymore. She tried messaging me once, just a short, shaking line about wanting to talk. But I didn't reply. I wasn't cruel. I was done. I spent my time focusing on myself, rediscovering the quiet I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Nights became calmer. Mornings felt lighter. I wasn't waking up dreading arguments or emotional games. I could breathe without waiting for the next jab disguised as family advice. And in that peace, I finally saw how much I had tolerated just to keep the relationship alive. It wasn't love, it was endurance. It was survival. It was me trying to convince myself that being chosen halfway was better than being alone. But alone didn't feel empty anymore. Felt clean. Felt honest. Felt like the first real beginning I'd had in a long time. On the fourth day, her brother showed up at my doorstep as if he expected to drag me back into their chaos. He asked me to reconsider, insisted she was devastated, said she had been crying all night and blaming herself for everything. But I had heard these performances before. Guilt, pity, emotional pressure. It was all part of the same cycle I had lived through for years. I listened quietly, then told him kindly but firmly that my decision wasn't changing. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted her to suffer. Simply because I had reached a point where continuing would have meant losing myself completely. And I refused to shrink any further for people who couldn't even appreciate my presence. After he left, the silence settled again. Soft, steady, and unbroken. I went for a long walk that evening, letting the cool air wrap around me as I replayed the last years of my life. And something unexpected happened. Instead of sadness, I felt gratitude. Not for the pain, but for the clarity it gave me. For the courage I finally found. For the strength to walk away even when every part of me was used to staying. I realized then that heartbreak isn't always a tragedy. Sometimes it's an awakening. Sometimes the quiet after the storm is the first time you truly hear your own voice. She never contacted me again after that day. Maybe she understood. Maybe she moved on. Maybe she kept searching for the stability she assumed would come easily. But that was no longer my story to follow. My chapter with her had ended the moment I chose myself over her family's expectations. The moment I stopped fighting for a place where I was never truly welcomed. And as strange as it felt, the ending wasn't bitter. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply necessary. A soft, final exhale after years of holding my breath. And so I closed that door without anger, without regret, without looking back even once. Because sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is walk away from love that demands he disappear to keep it alive. And I was finally done disappearing.